Good afternoon and welcome to AgriFood Conversations, brought to you by iSelect Fund, the Van Trump Report, the Yield Lab Institute, and Family Farms Group. My name is Tom Bunn, an associate on the iSelect Fund Ventures team, and I'm excited to welcome you all to our discussion this afternoon. AgriFood Conversations is all about driving innovation in food and ag. Each month, we highlight a specific theme, and this month's theme is indoor farming. And on today's call, we're joined by Sam Schatz, the Managing Director of AeroFarms. AeroFarms is a sustainable indoor agriculture company based in Newark, New Jersey, and uses a patented aeroponic growing system to grow produce. Each of you knows companies are more likely to succeed with the right network of customers, talent, investors, and advisors. We've invited you to this call because you are some of the smartest, most talented people in AeroFarms who are potential customers for AeroFarms products and services. You've built a company similar to AeroFarms, or you are a sophisticated business person or ag professional who understands their market and the challenges and opportunities that AeroFarms may face. Before we get started, we have a quick poll question to get a better idea of who we have on the call today. Please take a few seconds to answer. A few process comments while the poll is running. We are not soliciting investment. This presentation is to provide information to help AeroFarms find customers, mentors, or other strategic relationships that can help them grow their business. Secondly, you are all on mute. However, you can use the chat window to ask a question at any time, and we will open it up for Q&A at the end, during which you can either type in a question or you can unmute yourself and ask Sam the question directly. Finally, this presentation is being recorded and will be available for replay. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce Sam Schatz of AeroFarms. Sam, take it away.
Thanks, Tom, and thank you for the opportunity here to talk about AeroFarms and our story. Hopefully, I can get to the next slide here. So, thanks everybody for joining. I am the Managing Director here at AeroFarms. I practically lead our farm development, so where and when and how we build our next vertical farms. I've been with the company since the beginning, so I was the first employee after the founders, and have seen the company go through much of the history, not all of it, but much of the history that I'm going to show on the next slide. So I'm just going to talk at a high level here about who we are, a little bit about our history, the problems that we're trying to solve, and then really want to leave it open to questions and have a conversation. So to start, the technology of aeroponics and specifically the AeroFarms technology came out of the Cornell School of Agriculture, Professor Ed Harwood in 2004. We began actually as an OEM. We were selling equipment for a number of years. Sold systems all over the world, won a few awards, but we realized early on in our history that we really needed to continuously improve these systems. And we decided it really made more sense for us to own and operate so that we could continually develop this technology, build better systems, build larger systems as well, and really get the technology to where it is today, and really the sky's the limit. In terms of what we think this technology. 2011 Series A of $10 million, and I think this was back in late 2013. And then we built several farms here in the Newark area, many different iterations built off of this original technology, and we've been operating now what we consider the largest vertical farm in the world out of Newark, New Jersey now for about 2.5, 3 years. And we'll highlight that this facility was practically designed 5 years ago, 6 years ago, around that time period. So there's been a tremendous amount of growth and innovation since this facility was designed, as we've operated it, and we've been able to kind of perfect our practices and standardize our operating procedures. So which is super. But the images that you're going to see are still based on those older designs. So there's a lot of really great new technology coming, and we think we're still in the infancy of this industry. Once we built out these farms, we started to sell our products to retailers like Whole Foods and ShopRite and Fresh Direct, and we continued to build out different products with those retailers, and we've had a really successful time in getting our products to the market. We've also raised subsequent rounds of funding. We've collaborated closely with the USDA. We've brought in funding from IKEA and ADM Capital and Alliance Bernstein. We've built out partnerships with Dell on the technology side of the business, which we also develop here internally. And we've really built out a tremendous platform to expand our capabilities, not only with leafy greens, but with many other different types of crops. And really a lot of the work that our organization is doing is trying to figure out how can we use the technology of vertical farming and aeroponics and our vertical integration and trying to solve these issues to increase food security globally and provide local production at scale. We've just recently received some awards as well. One most recently was one of the top companies for innovation from Fast Company and one of the best inventions of 2019 from Time Magazine. So we're very thrilled to have a leadership position in this industry and be able to continue to help build interest in this sector, and we think that there's tremendous growth ahead. So the technology of vertical farming and aeroponics is really broad, and in that we think that we can grow truly any crop with this technology. Now, that doesn't mean we can we're going to grow every crop, and obviously many crops are, crops that are sold in the ton or the bushel are going to be less likely to be in the very near term, grown with vertical farms in a cost competitive way. But there are many other crops where we think the cost curve that we've been able to achieve with leafy greens can be applied to these other crops, and we can start to have a meaningful impact on more caloric foods outside of leafy greens. And so that's something that we're committed to, and we're working to provide this really based on these factors here: year-round availability. We want to make sure that we have no pesticide residue on the plants, and when you grow indoors, you don't use the pesticides. It's reducing price volatility, increasing freshness, so fewer distribution miles mean lower shipping costs, but more fresh product. And then obviously, of course, reduce land degradation, reduce water usage, reduce food waste. All of these are huge opportunities for the sector. Some products obviously are more water intensive than others. Some products have more pesticide residue than others, but we think that this has a broad application and a broad appeal. So these are our systems in Newark. As you can see here, everything that you're seeing in this image, we designed, procured, manufactured, installed. We operate these facilities. We're vertically integrated to produce these entire systems, from the PLCs to the software to how it all integrates with the building, the packaging. So it's really a fully integrated system, and we really need to do that in order to achieve the unit economics that we need to achieve to compete with traditional farming, so that we can really have a meaningful value proposition to the market and really change how we grow certain types of food. And we're on a mission truly to grow the best plants possible for the betterment of humanity. We're a B Corporation. We're also part of the Circular Economy 100. These are part of our DNA. When we became a B Corp, we didn't actually have to change anything about what we were doing as a company, which was terrific. We were already doing all of the things that B Corps are supposed to be doing. And I think that just speaks to the fact that the ideas behind being part of your community, being a steward for the environment and for the community, and doing what's right not just for your customer and your investors, but for all stakeholders is really part of who we are as a company. So really proud to be in a B Corp, and also really proud that we didn't have to change who we were to become a B Corp. And I think that's very meaningful from our perspective. So the facilities themselves, they're, as you can see, we're growing leafy greens. We have 14 levels designed in this facility. The building itself that we're building this equipment into looks like a warehouse because it is a warehouse. And we're building these farms to really leverage this very common asset type that you find all over the world near cities. And so these are Class A industrial warehouses. They have high ceiling heights, contiguous square footage, and we can use existing warehouse equipment like scissor lifts and forklifts. We have the floor loading that we need to accommodate all of the automation equipment and machinery that we need to move product in and out of the facilities, and we're able to keep them very clean and very safe for our employees. So that's why we focus on warehouses, and we've had a lot of success in leveraging that asset type to enable this production at scale. I'll talk, community as well has been a big part of who we are. We've been, the Newark community in New Jersey has been a tremendous partner of ours over the last several years, and we're expanding to new markets in the United States. Our next farm project is going to be looking to be in the United States, at least in Virginia, and then we have projects really where we're building out a pipeline all over the world. And one of the things that we prioritize when we partner with communities are those communities aligned with and are we aligned with their vision in terms of what they want to achieve? And some of the things that we try to do is not alienate the community or our employees from the products that we're growing. And so we operate farm stands where we sell a portion of the produce at reduced prices to employees and to the community. And that's an initiative that we want to be able to bring as we expand across the country and internationally as well. We also are able to repurpose buildings. So you can see here the before and after are quite different. Much of this building was new construction, and then a lot of it was a retrofit. And that's something that we want to continue to do, is to take not just greenfield projects, but brownfields and really develop them and reinvigorate communities as well around those brownfield sites. And so we look at a lot of brownfield developments. Sometimes it makes sense. Sometimes new construction makes sense. But in any case, we're looking to develop projects in concert with the community and their plans. We also partner with schools, and this is a great farm that we have in a school in Newark called the Phillips Academy Charter School. And as you can see, Michelle Obama visited. This has been a tremendous program, and what it does is it changes diet, it changes eating habits, and it also builds. There's a multidisciplinary curriculum built around STEM education and interacting with these, and it's everything from science and technology to even the arts. There's tremendous applications of having these types of units in schools. And it doesn't necessarily even have to be in schools. It can be in community centers, retirement homes, lots of different types of applications for interacting with these types of units. And we have a partnership currently with Jersey City, where we're building out a number of different farms to benefit communities within Jersey City. And we're hoping to expand that program as well. I mentioned this before. We've been very fortunate to lead the industry in terms of awards, and I think it's great for us, obviously, but it's great for the industry. We think there's a lot of growth ahead, and we're really happy that that we're able to be an important voice in advocating for the continued development of what we're trying to achieve. And we think that it's really been catching on in the last couple of years, and folks are realizing that vertical farms have the ability to be these tremendous assets, not just in terms of job creation, but as a resiliency and as a hedge against food insecurity. And just through the crisis that we've been faced here in the New York City area, and the whole country is faced, but certainly when we were in the depths of it back in March and April and May, we kept the farm running, and we were continuing to produce food. We were continuing to employ the community, and we were servicing the New York City market with healthy food through the crisis. And I think that's something that that has resonated with ourselves, and certainly I think more broadly as well, and that these types of facilities can really provide that type of food security. And I mentioned this as well, the Times Best Invention of 2019. Just a little bit more about the process. Sometimes folks are kind of blend together hydroponics and aeroponics. Aeroponics is a form of hydroponics. The main difference is that we are misting the plants with a nutrient rich mixture of micro and macronutrients. And what that does is it provides oxygenation of the root system and accelerates and enhances growth. The plants, the leaves actually want, of course, everybody knows they want CO2, but the roots want oxygen. And by providing a misting system, you're able to oxygenate the root system and provide stronger, healthier plants. And so one of the unique ways in which we've built out our systems is around the aeroponics, which is a bit more complex in delivering at scale. And we've managed to do that for leafy greens and for other crops. And as we think it has a longer term benefit on the plant's health. And then, as I mentioned, we're selling to retailers, Whole Foods, Fresh Direct. We're selling a product under a label called Dream Greens, which really highlights the uniqueness of our value proposition in terms of growing locally, the fact that the produce is pesticide free, and that it's sustainably grown indoors. And we see this as partially, a great brand, but also it's talking about and educating the consumer on the unique ways in which we grow and how they're getting provided with food. We're partnering with folks around the world. We have an international investor base. We have, for instance, Maras, which is Dubai Holding. So we have a big presence that we're building out in the United Arab Emirates. In Abu Dhabi, we're going to be building the largest R&D vertical farm in the world there, and that project is currently underway. We're expanding our capabilities here in the Newark area. We're building, and that's in partnership with Goldman Sachs, and we're also going to be building in Virginia as well, expanding into the Commonwealth, and have other projects that we're looking to do in the United States. And then we have an international investor base in the UK and Europe, and with IKEA and Grosvenor Estate, and then also in China as well with GSR Ventures. And Tom, I guess I'll just leave it there. I want to make sure folks can reach out to me if they'd like. This is my email address. Feel free to contact me if you have an interest in what we're doing. I'm happy to talk more about our expansion plans, and feel free to add me on LinkedIn, and also follow AeroFarms as well. We have a great team doing a lot of great work with social media, and we have an Instagram account and all that good stuff. So
terrific, great, thank you, Sam. Thank you for the great presentation, and we'll go into Q&A. So for the audience's knowledge, seems like most of there's some questions coming in already, but you can ask a question by using the Q&A box found in the middle of your screen, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you and you can ask your question out loud. Either one is fine, but we have some questions coming in right now. Looks like Rune asks and says, thanks for sharing. Could you tell about how you include thoughts on circularity?
Circularity, like circular economy, I guess.
That is not expressed. I assume that is what Rune means.
Yeah. So I think, we have, on the one hand, our farms are consuming energy, right? So we're not using sunlight, we're using LEDs. And that energy consumption obviously has an impact on, on CO2 emissions and things like that. What we try to do is, one, partner with markets and partner with utilities where we have a lower carbon footprint, and where that base load capacity that they have is from sustainable sources, or as many sustainable sources as possible. We also look to do solar in combination with our facilities, and there's a couple of projects where that looks like it can be a meaningful part in combination with other renewables. We have a waste stream that we think has abilities to be used and create new products from it. So that's another aspect where we can really minimize any waste and really utilize the full plant as we develop the leafy greens business, but also other businesses as well. The water usage, we have farms that we're looking to build in areas that are very have much scarcer water than the New York City area, and so how do you reuse and recycle that water more meaningfully than how we're already doing it? Our facilities already use much less water than conventional agriculture, but and that's partially because the leafy green crops in particular can't use, they don't commonly use drip irrigation methods. They have to use more traditional methods. So it's very water intensive for that crop in particular. And so we have mechanisms where we're working to recycle water even more than we already have as well. So there's a lot of things that we're doing to help that. We think that the technology itself, even as a baseline, is minimizing our impact on the environment so meaningfully, because we're able to grow year round on 14 levels using a fraction of the land. So we have 400 times more production per square foot versus conventional farming, because we're growing on 14 levels. We have 26 crops a year, and we have a greater crop density because we're able to much more finely space out the plants in a way that optimizes growth. So it's really a combination of things, but it's top of mind for us, and we're always thinking about how we can improve, how we can lessen the environmental footprint, and really eliminate it in the long term.
Great, thanks for that. Another question, how do you ensure the flavor for the leafy greens meet consumer expectations?
Yeah, well, the flavor is, if you grow healthy plants, they're going to taste good. And we're focused on growing healthy plants. And that's part of why we have the aeroponics. That's why we constantly are monitoring the farm. We're constantly monitoring what we call our growing recipes to make sure that they're optimized towards the product specs that we're trying to achieve. How the plant looks, the physiology of the plant, the spec of the plant, all of that is constantly being monitored, and we're always soliciting feedback from the market on how tasty our greens are, and that's probably the best way to assure of it, that we're meeting our customer needs. But I mean, one of the biggest surprises I think I had with these greens were, I thought that the AeroFarms was going to compete on all these different categories, like the shorter cold chain, the pesticide free, the fresher, all of those things. But really, the taste has been what's kind of is above and beyond, I think, a lot of folks' expectations is the consistent quality of the plants in terms of flavor. So.
Great. Another question.
Try them. I don't mean to do a plug, but you can go on Fresh Direct if you're in the tri-state area and order them on Fresh Direct. So
plugs are welcome. Yeah. Another question. What other crops are you planning to grow in addition to leafy greens?
Well, I can't go into too much detail, unfortunately, but one of the crops that we're actively working on are strawberries, and we think that there's a lot of possibilities with berries more generally. But again, there's really, truly no limitation in terms of what we can accomplish. I think it really is going to come down to the economics, right? We can grow a lot of things, but the technology where it is today isn't necessarily ideal for all crops. You know, I think that there's strong cases to be made for row crops, but it's probably not in the next 5 years. It's probably further down the line as, you know, efficiencies in this continue to improve. But, you know, we have a whole side of our company that's just focused on new crop development. And then we're designing systems that are really built around those different plants. The image that you see here, these systems were designed and engineered around short stem leafy greens, and we've grown hundreds of different varieties. But new crops, new groups of crops require different engineered systems, and that's why the vertical integration is key. And strawberries is probably the one that we talk about most and we're most excited about and is the furthest along, but there are many others, I think, right behind them. So I guess stay tuned, and as soon as you know, I can talk about them, I will, because I love to let folks know about what we're doing.
Great. Another question is, what is your view of leveraging indoor vertical farming knowledge to develop protein products and ingredients?
Yeah, so I think firstly, I think some of the applications for vertical farming, no question, will be in animal feed. So I think there's an ability for a vertical farm to accelerate growth of crops to provide animal feed. And that could be either the primary crops or it could be byproducts of existing crops. And I think, you know, we are always looking to partner with folks to continue to develop that. And beyond that, I think it's something that, you know, we're looking at how can we leverage this technology to do as many things as possible. And on the one hand, we're trying to stay as focused as possible, because you have to when you're a relatively young company in a relatively young industry. But at the same time, we want to remain flexible and agile and open to new opportunities. And so if, you know, as folks come to us and have ideas, we are open to exploring those and talking to them about how we think our systems could be leveraged to benefit the protein industry. Hope that answers the question. I know this is kind of difficult to have a conversation, but I hope that answers the question.
Another question: how do you guys manage your disease issues? Does the aeroponic system make it more easier on the other way around, or the other way around?
Well, I mean, we have an integrated pest management strategy, I think, like any grower does. Obviously, the issues for an indoor farmer, and particularly a vertical farmer, are different for, you know, greenhouse or an outdoor farmer. And we have our own pest management strategy professionals here that are constantly monitoring the facility. You know, and we do everything we can to keep the facility as safe as possible. We, you know, we're washing down the most of the processing equipment on a daily basis, and the grow towers very regularly. And it's very important, you know, from a food safety standpoint, particularly as it's the beginning of the industry. And we want to be sure that the industry is known as one that takes food safety very, very seriously. And so we're very conscientious of that and want to lead in that effort. And so we really go above and beyond here to have that a strategy that is as robust as possible. And so we've implemented tactically many different approaches to solve problems over the years. I think we've had a lot of the same exposures and things that other folks in controlled environment agriculture have had, and we have, you know, a strategy here that's kind of tailored to how we operate as a company and our facilities. And I think every grower would say something similar. There's no one size fits all approach, and it's kind of a boots and suspenders approach to kind of make sure you're constantly on top of it.
Got it. And do you have to deal with what are the particular diseases you have to deal with?
Well, I think some of the diseases that are typical to the industry of like leafy greens and salad greens are, you know, things like E. coli and Listeria, which I think you can debate the sources of them in that industry, but a lot of it is because of the irrigation of crops that are outdoors. And that irrigated water is not potable water sources, right? It's almost always non-potable. And so a lot of those issues are resolved because we're using potable sources for our irrigation of our plants. And so, you know, if there was Listeria in a potable water source, the exposure of the leafy green farm would be the least of our concerns. There'd be much broader implications for that. So that's why we're focused on that. But we do have, you know, other pests and things, you know, that we're always looking at. Anything from, you know, a drain fly could be a pest to, you know, spider mites and things like that. And we're always dealing with those. And we've managed to keep those incidents at an absolute minimum. And, but, you know, it's a constant struggle, obviously. And we're always being as astute as we possibly can in executing those strategies.
Great. Here's one. Root/solid soil interactions and dynamics are, I assume, significantly different from root/mist interactions. How do you make sure the same soil-specific processes take place to get flavorous plants?
Well, we have I think 22 macro and micronutrients that we're putting into our nutrient solution, and we're constantly misting the plants, and we're constantly monitoring that solution to make sure that we're meeting the needs of those plants, and we're providing as healthy of a plant as possible. And you combine that with the oxygenation of the root system through the aeroponics system, and the fact that we're delivering the spectrum that the plants need on a continual basis, the result is very, very healthy, great tasting plants. And I think it's for folks that haven't eaten, you know, our greens from, you know, I think it's an education and an understanding of our process, and the product really speaks for itself. And we've had a great experience in the marketplace, you know, and have had continued interest in our consumer, you know, from a customer standpoint in our products. And we, you know, we have a lot of confidence in our approach. And even though it's soilless, we've managed to have consistent quality, consistent flavor, consistent freshness in a way that has been, I think, very impactful. So.
Do you have any data on nutrition versus conventional farming?
We've done some nutritional testing. I don't have it off the top of my head, but as far as I understand, we've had equal, if not superior, nutrition for many of our products. So versus the kind of the standard guidelines.
Got it. When are you coming to the UK?
Well, I'd love to come to the UK. I spent 3 years living there, and we have investors that are based there, and I think it could have a tremendous impact, with Sainsbury's and Tesco's and Marks and Spencer's and all these retailers that are now, I think, really working to build partnerships so that they can have an assured supply of these products and many other products. And I think, the UK is a great opportunity, but it also is a relatively high cost environment. And so we've been looking at a number of ways to reduce those costs so that we can really compete with, the field grown crops that are grown at a very low cost structure in places like Spain. So that's, I think, the main challenge, but we do think we have a compelling business case there, and we're actively looking at projects either in the UK or to get, there could be ways to service the UK, not necessarily from within the UK, at a lower cost structure. So we're looking at a number of different ways to do that.
Great. Do you share technology with small farmers?
Do we share technology with small farmers? I think we do to a certain extent. Obviously, the technology is moving really quickly, and we would share the technology moving really quickly, and it's really a matter of understanding how that small farmer is looking to use the technology and what their intentions are long term. But we absolutely look to license our technologies, and small farms we think are a great potential avenue to do that. And we're also looking to, through this initiative I mentioned with Jersey City, where we're looking to provide systems for a number of different uses. We're looking to expand that as well, and that would provide direct access to our technology to small farmers.
How do you build in active and live microbiomes?
Yeah, so I think we're getting a little bit outside my comfort zone. I'm on the business side of the group here, and but I will say that microbiomes is something that my understanding is it's something that we have a lot of confidence exists in our systems. There's, I think, some good evidence for it, but it's not something that, at least currently, I understand we're actively tracking, but we do believe exists in our systems. And I think it's kind of like we're still in triage mode as a company. Like, there's all of these different things that we want to learn and we believe exist and can learn, and there's all this potential on the microbiology side, on the genetics, across the board, where we think we can improve upon what we're doing. And we're just trying to triage it and get through the big items first and improve the cost structure so that we can have a bigger impact. And this definitely falls into that category.
Great. What made you decide on strawberries as your first flowering plant crop?
I think it was mainly demand driven. I think there's just a very strong market for it. There's a lot of pain points in that industry as well, in terms of providing a quality berry with high sugar content and with consistent quality and consistent supply. And it's just very widely consumed and widely loved crop. And the cost, the price point is also one where we felt like we could compete. It was a high enough price point, and obviously vertical farming is capital intensive. It's still the infancy of the industry, so our cost structure is still relatively high versus where we expect it to be in the next couple of years. So we just felt like, if our beachhead was leafy greens, that this was our kind of next, our next, I don't know, battle, I guess. I don't know what the appropriate analogy is, but we felt like this was our next high potential crop. And, we've done a lot of work in that space, and we feel like we have a compelling business case for it.
Any plans to implement robotic automation systems?
Well, certainly, so certainly automation, I understand that it's very different than robotics. We have a lot of automation technology that's being integrated. The facility that you see in this picture here was really designed around flexibility and not necessarily around automation, because we wanted to operate it, understand it before we implemented a lot of automation. So that's why you see the person on the bottom left on a scissor lift. But future farms, the ones that we've already built have a lot of this automation already included. Robotics is a little bit different, obviously. I think for berries, for instance, things like soft touch robotics are very applicable, and it's technology that we're looking at. But it all depends on the costs, and we have to understand the costs of implementing that versus not using robotics. And if it's competitive, we're open to all possibilities in terms of getting our cost structure more and more competitive. I will say, because our technology is relatively young and it's something that we're still working through many different, we're still problem solving a lot of different things. It's always difficult to compound risk with more technology that isn't necessarily proven out. And so, we're always evaluating new technologies that come in, but it doesn't always make sense. And even if it does seem to make sense, but there's a lot of technology risk associated with it, we may not pursue it just because we've got enough other issues as we're exploring some of these new crops. For leafy greens, not so much, but for some of these new crops.
Great, thank you. And do you guys recycle your irrigation? Do you use UV disinfection?
Yeah, we do. We do recycle our water. So basically, what you're seeing here is at the base of these systems, you have a reservoir system. The nutrients are pumped up to the different levels, and then that water goes back into a central reservoir where it's refed with nutrients, and then there's on-site filtration that occurs to make sure that the water is meeting our needs and our specifications. Obviously, over time, things like algae build up, and that algae can negatively impact the systems, and so there's cleanings that need to happen. But for the most part, we're recycling the water, and that's one of the reasons why we're able to use so much less. Most of the water loss is evaporation off the systems, and that's where, in other places where you're in more kind of water scarce environments, being able to reuse that water and plug it back into the systems can be very meaningful.
Great. An anonymous attendee asks, vertical farming will have a huge impact on the traditional farming long-term. Do you consider this in your long-term growth strategy? For example, skills transfer, social impact, et cetera?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of the reason why we want to have these like school systems, and we want to get vertical farming more into the mainstream and get STEM curriculums and education built around these types of systems. And the grow towers are really just the tip of the iceberg, right? I mean, it's what everybody sees, and it's beautiful. I mean, they're beautiful systems, and it's certainly one of the more important parts, but it's really just a piece of the puzzle. And there's all of the infrastructure that's needed to support it. It's all of the automation equipment, the packaging, the processing, all of the standard operating procedures, the HVAC, all of that is integral. And some of that is new technology, like particularly the grow towers and how they integrate, and some of it are existing expertise that we want to make sure we're nurturing for this industry, and we're fostering innovation that can be specifically utilized for this industry. And that's why we're laying a lot of this groundwork today, is because we are thinking long term that this isn't going to just be leafy greens. There's going to be many other applications, and that's where we're how we're setting ourselves up is to solve many of these other problems.
Great. What percentage of the unit costs relate to the energy cost of the grow lights? And is this the biggest hurdle for economic viability to vertical farming?
Yeah, so it's obviously a significant percentage. The exact number really depends on your cost per kilowatt hour for electricity, but it is a hurdle. One of the kind of tailwinds we have is that the LEDs, they've become very, very efficient over the years, and they've continually become more efficient, and we expect they will going forward. And the LEDs, as they become as the efficiency per watt improves, that doesn't only have an impact on the direct growing, but it has an effect on a lot of the environmental controls as well, because you have potentially less evaporation, less cooling requirements as the LEDs become more efficient. And so we see that trend continuing, and we see innovation in cooling and in the lighting continuing as well. We have many different initiatives here internally to continuously improve and optimize from an energy standpoint. So we see that certainly a challenge today, but I think going down, a few years from now, we see it as a huge opportunity for savings. And we're still saving dollars off of our cost structure, and I think more mature industries are saving pennies or nickels, and I think energy is one of those areas where we feel like we can continuously drive down the costs.
Great. Antonio asks, will AeroFarm solutions be limited to large investors? What about small companies or small groups of people, or even individuals that would like to get into vertical farming?
Yeah, so I think so there's a couple ways to answer that. We are obviously privately held right now. So the investors that we've brought in have been large institutional investors to help us get the capital we need so that we can get the economies of scale that we need in our production. As the technology becomes more and more established, and I think we're getting to a point where there's a value proposition and a risk reward proposition for smaller investors to build these. We will be looking to partner with folks to develop and deploy our systems, because we believe the best way to scale our business and get systems out there to the world is to partner with folks to a large degree. We will, of course, continually develop and own and operate our farms as well, but we do want to work with farmers all over the world to bring these systems to different markets everywhere. And so I do think there will be an opportunity there, and we welcome collaboration, and we're always, even though may not be ready today to move something like that forward, I think we are developing that network, and if you're interested, please reach out, and we can talk about your interest and how and what markets and what you're looking to do. So,
how do you monitor nutrient buildup when recycling water?
So I think one of probably the most straightforward ways to answer that question is you can look at I think you can do like a electrical conductivity test on the water. I think that's fairly standard practice to see the amount of dissolved nutrients in a solution, but that's kind of like the business school answer to the question. I'm sure there's a more technical one. So, but that process, I know we do test like the electrical conductivity to make sure the nutrients are balanced. But we also have systems where we're constantly monitoring for, I think 22 macro and micronutrients, and that's a much more robust system as well that we're monitoring on a much finer basis than just looking at the total amounts. And that process, I don't know exactly how that technology works, but I do know that we employ it.
Do you see modified seeds engineered intentionally for hydroponic farming playing a role in the future of the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I think all of the seeds that we've been growing to date have been for, built around outdoor farming, and indoor farms have, it's the nature versus nurture. And the controlled environment agriculture is always on the nurture side, but it's only half the equation, right? And the genetics combined with providing the optimal conditions to meet those genetics are going to have huge impacts down the line. And that's something that we're directly involved with in our work as well, is to help accelerate that, because we think it can have an enormous impact. So absolutely.
All right, one more question. This says, often and in most scientific papers, population growth seems to be the main argument of vertical farming. But is vertical farming suitable for growing staple crops? And if not, what are the main barriers?
Yeah. So it's a great question. I think, firstly, today we are not farming and feeding our planet in a way that is sustainable. We're in the middle of a crisis now with certainly with COVID and the coronavirus, but I think the potentially larger one coming is climate change, right? And I think we're all, starting to see the effects of that, and it's part of how we just live our lives in the developed world. And I think farming is a big component of that. And vertical farming isn't about 2050. It's about today, and how can we solve the problems that we have today. Leafy greens is, if we just grow leafy greens, though, we're not going to change the world. We're going to change how we grow our salads, and that's great. But there's much more that needs to be done to have a much broader impact on how we feed this planet. And we need to do more with less. And vertical farms can help achieve that. Now, crops that are grown in the field, row crops, have very low cost structure to produce, right? So, and that's why I mentioned, anything that's sold by the ton, right, is going to it's going to be hard to compete, because it's just a very different cost structure. Building these systems are capital intensive, and at current prices today for wheat and soy and other grains, I think it would be very difficult. But if you ascribe to the view that prices, supply and demand, and prices go up in the next 10, 15 years, you could very feasibly be at a price point where other solutions become more viable for these types of crops. And that's not a great scenario, because we don't want to be paying more for these crops. But at the same time, we think if we are able to develop that technology today, and we can continue to develop this technology for the crops that we can, if and when that happens, we'll be in a very good position to solve those problems then. And then we'll be in the same position as new technology for a crop that is just in its infancy, that has the ability to shave down the cost structure meaningfully. And then it's just economies of scale, and getting to a point where you have enough scale to continuously grow these crops and competitively with the market. And it may not work in all markets, and that's okay. We see this as part of a broader solution. And there's going to need to be innovation in field farming, in greenhouse farming, and in vertical farming in order to solve the challenges that we have ahead. So I know that's a long-winded way, and it doesn't directly answer the question, but I think it's a hard question to answer. And I think we're all trying to, every player in this industry, I think, is trying to thinking through these issues, and trying to look at what we're facing today and the challenges that we have ahead.
Fantastic. Well, Sam, thank you so much for joining us today. We're pushing to the bottom of the hour here. For all the attendees, we thank you for joining. We host these calls every week at 3 p.m. Central. And as a reminder, this month's theme is indoor farming. So tune in over the next 3 weeks to hear some more solution providers. You see Sam's email address there for any of you with remaining questions. If it's all right with Sam, feel free to reach out directly. And we hope to see you next week. And again, Sam, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks everybody for joining.